Hello, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about our new DDoS simulation partner, MazeBolt, and how they help customers to manage DDoS vulnerability in Azure. My name is Amir Dahan. I'm a product manager in Azure Networking. And with me today, we have our guest speaker, Matthew Andriani, MazeBolt's CEO. Hey, Matthew, great having you with us today. And
Hey Amir, good to be here.
Thank you for joining this webinar to talk about MazeBolt RADAR solution. In the webinar today, we will see how MazeBolt provides organizations with an innovative approach for data simulation testing and vulnerability management. We start by reviewing some of the DDoS attack landscape in Azure, and then briefly describing Azure DDoS Protection Service, its scale and main features. Then we will hand over to Matthew, who will talk about their solution, its value proposition, and we'll run a short demo of how it works. So let's get started. I assume many of you know what is a DDoS attack. In a nutshell, it is when bad actor either uses a compromised bot network or a data stressing tool to flood a target network, cloud resource, or application until a point when it can no longer serve legitimate customer requests due to reasons such as network congestion and ICP utilization. So why customers in Azure should care about DDoS attacks? Simple reason is that any resource that is receiving traffic from the internet is susceptible to DDoS attacks. And let me double click on that a little bit more. Azure is well protected at the platform level. We work hard to make sure that the Azure regions, data centers, and our Azure services are protected against even the largest DDoS attacks. We successfully mitigated DDoS attacks at terabits per second capacities in the last couple of years. However, majority of the DDoS attacks are lower in throughput, even lower than 10 million packets per second or 10 gigabits per second. These attacks are too small to risk Azure, but they may be devastating to your applications running in Azure. And the downtime cost may be thousands of dollars per minute. This is where Azure DDoS protection offering to customers comes into play, as we will discuss briefly in the next slides. Before we explain the key value that Azure DDoS Protection Service offers to customers, let's look at some key DDoS attack threat landscape we saw in the last year in Azure. We mitigated more than 600,000 attacks during 2023. And this year, we anticipate close to 1 million attacks with an average of 3,500 attacks each day. Think about it. On average, in any single day, there are thousands of volumetric DDoS attacks targeting Azure resources. This speaks to the ambition of adversaries that try to take down cloud applications and resources. Of course, these attacks are fully mitigated with the help of our globally distributed DDoS attack detection and mitigation pipeline. The holiday season at the end of the year is typically the hot season for DDoS attacks. There are many reasons to that, but this is a recurrent pattern we witnessed year over year. In terms of attack vectors, TCP attacks are most common as adversaries primarily look to knock down web applications. However, UDP attacks are also most common against web applications with approximately 35% of total attacks. We see many cases where web applications are attacked by a UDP flood with the purpose of choking the network itself, regardless of whether the application even serves UDP traffic or not. To effectively deal with thousands of daily attacks, we built a scalable attack mitigation pipeline. Let's talk a bit about it. Azure DDoS Protection safeguards our platform and online services. In fact, We protect any Microsoft online service you may use, not only your applications running in Azure. This includes M365, Xbox, LinkedIn, and others. Our mitigation pipeline is globally distributed across our regions and net sites. We deployed a massive 100 terabits per second of mitigation capacity using advanced technologies and hardware-assisted mitigation acceleration. And we continue to expand as Azure grows. Moreover, we don't only protect attacks from the internet, but continuously detect and mitigate attacks originating from within Azure to other resources on the internet. This is to address a recent trend where we observe bad actors spawning VMs trying to exploit discounting subscriptions like student subscriptions for malicious activities. With that, I concluded the threat landscape intro, and now I would like to shortly discuss Azure DDoS protection service we offer to customers before handing over to Matthew. In high level, Azure DDoS protection offers customers protection against application-targeted attacks. It dynamically adapts to your specific resources in Azure, detects traffic anomalies, and mitigates attacks. Let's describe it a bit more. Azure DDoS provides enterprise-grade DDoS protection. As shown in the figure, any resource in a virtual network that is open to the internet exposes an attack vector and an attack surface. When you enable DDoS protection on a virtual network, we monitor all internet-facing resources automatically and apply protection. The cool point here is that customers do not need to configure anything. Everything is automatically being applied. Customers may decide which resources they want to protect in a virtual network, but they don't need to be DDoS experts to configure the DDoS protection policy. Recently, Gartner has called out Azure DDoS as a leader among hyperclouds in his Peer Insights Award. Ease of use was one of the key benefits that were identified in this research. Since Azure DDoS protection is native Azure service, we will automatically detect and apply protection to your resources and provide rich telemetry through Azure Monitor. Moreover, you don't need to deploy any resource in your virtual network environment. Azure DDoS service is overlaid on top of your network architecture, and you don't need to change anything. Few words about DDoS rapid response and cost protection. When we speak to customers, we hear that they value these value-added features because they get peace of mind out of those. DDoS rapid response offers a 15-minute SLA for a hotline to an engineer to support you under attack, which is critical in emergency situations. Cost protection provides what I call an insurance policy that protects you of excess billing events directly related to DDoS attacks. Still, the best protection itself may not be enough if you don't simulate attacks on your application before going to production. Attack simulation is a recommended best practice to assess the readiness of your environment against various DDoS attack vectors before going online. Let's discuss this now. It's a good practice to test how applications hosted in Azure respond to an attack by conducting periodic simulations. Simulation testing allows customers to assess their current state of readiness, identify gaps in their incident response procedures, and guide them in developing a proper DDoS response strategy. We believe that DDoS simulation should be conducted by third-party vendors that are neutral and specialized in DDoS simulations. To support that, we offer customers multiple simulation partners, some of which use self-service portals, and others offer full managed solutions depending on the exact customer need. You can find more information under Azure DDoS protection documentation. In most cases, when customers engage with either of the simulation partners for testing, Microsoft is not involved. If there are questions or specific needs, for example, requesting to increase attack throughput on some of the resources, we are looped in to support our customers and simulation partners. Since we launched the partner program, we witnessed many cases where comprehensive simulations took place successfully, which in turn raised the confidence of our customers in Azure DDoS protection service. In this webinar, we focus on our new partner, MazeBolt, that offers a unique patent-protected solution for non-disruptive simulation. What does it mean? MazeBolt allows customers to run DDoS simulations against their applications in their production environment without disturbing their online services. This eliminates the complexity of creating testing environment and scheduling acceptable time windows for testing. To introduce MazeBolt and talk more about their solution, I'll hand over to Matthew.
Thank you, Amir. I'm just going to share my screen. So thank you for that introduction, Amir, and it's great to be joining you. And thank you for the participants joining and coming to hear about MazeBolt RADAR and about how this capability, as Amir said, this non-disruptive DDoS simulation capability helps Azure customers completely prevent a damaging attack on their Azure services. As Amir mentioned, even though Microsoft does provide very good DDoS protection, if that protection is able to be penetrated, they then have a DDoS rapid response team. And our idea is that you never get to that response team, even though it's a very good team. Our idea here, what we're going to be looking at today, is how to prevent a damaging attack completely.
Hey, Matthew.
Yeah.
I don't think we're seeing your screen.
I apologize. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Excellent. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay. So I'm excited to be here, and let's move on and see more about the product and see what this new capability gives Azure customers. Radar is a patented solution. As Amir mentioned, it allows customers to run non-disruptive attack simulations. It runs on production without any service impact on your production services. And as Amir mentioned, every service you open up on Azure now has a lot of DDoS attack points, and Radar is able to cover all of the full attack surface of those particular services that you're running, which introduces the ability to actually have data-driven vulnerability reduction. It has no false positives. We'll see later on during the demo how this is achieved. You've got continual UI visibility with regards to your vulnerability analysis and that risk reduction. We have a multi-tenant capability in the product, and we have extensive reporting features that we'll look at later with the SIM integration. Some of you might be wondering, what is the difference if you've ever done red team testing or DDoS attack simulations which require maintenance period and disruption to your services? What is the main difference, just on a comparison, of the MazeBolt RADAR technology and traditional DDoS testing? First of all, we cover 100% of the attack surface, whereas traditional DDoS testing might be able to cover 1/10 of 1% of your attack surface. You require no service downtime. Radar is continuously evaluating how automated protections are working. We run well over 10,000 simulations annually, whereas the next best might be able to run up to 50 annually because of the requirement of a maintenance period that you have to have when you do any other of the traditional methods to find vulnerabilities. It identifies points of vulnerability in each layer of your protection, which we'll look at later in the next slide, how what that looks like. It covers all the security layers, and it reduces time to mitigation. As Amir mentioned, most of the time or many times it will be automated, but you want to find out what attacks can penetrate your defenses and take your services offline when it's not automated before that happens. And your ROI is dramatically optimized, as we'll see later on, because your automated protection actually starts to work in a much more effective manner when you start eliminating any type of vulnerability in the protection. The next question, of course, what is a DDoS vulnerability? If you look at this graph you see there's green and there's red. These layers of protection, CDN, scrubbing, CP, WAF, these indicate typical layers of protection an organization may have for DDoS protection. It's important to know as an organization which DDoS attack vectors are able to bypass each layer of DDoS security towards the targets which are protected here in the middle, the services that you're trying to protect, and understand which of those attacks would be blocked. The green here indicates that if an attack comes, that particular attack would be blocked by that particular layer. The red indicates that if a particular attack came, that attack would not be blocked and you would be in a reactive situation. A DDoS vulnerability is an attack vector plus a target plus a service. For instance, if you looked at a UDP garbage flood targeting MazeBolt.com to port 443, if that attack vector was able to penetrate your CDN layer, it would go into the red. If it was also able to penetrate the scrubbing center, it would go into the red. But if it got blocked here on some on-premise equipment, that would be mitigated. It would go into the green, automatically blocked. In the next example, if you had a SYN flood towards MazeBolt.com to port 443, the same process takes place. For every single service in your environment, radar simulates around 150 different attack vectors. For the purposes of this presentation, we'll be focused on Microsoft Azure DDoS Network Protection Services, which we refer to as SCB, Scrubbing Center in our terminology. And we'll be looking at the platform with regards to the Microsoft Protection Services. It is critical, excuse me, it is critical to have this vulnerability data to prevent a damaging attack if you don't want to have a rapid response scenario. Like all security, it needs to be validated. Microsoft is actually taking the DDoS threat very seriously. The DDoS attacks are increasing rapidly across the board. And because they know that DDoS defenses can be bypassed, that's why they encourage testing. DDoS protection without continuous testing and remediation, which is a very important component, is vulnerable. It's very vulnerable. Vulnerable protection, which we saw earlier what that means, what a vulnerability is what will lead to a damaging attack. And that's because what happens is when you get to one of those emergency response teams, rapid response teams, that was because of an undiscovered vulnerability in the protection of your particular service. And that's when you actually discover the vulnerability. The idea is you want to discover these vulnerabilities prior. We see on average across the industry that from over 100,000 hours of annual DDoS testing, we see around a 37% vulnerability level of environments, which means, again, the green means that if an attack arrives, it's automatically blocked. The red means if that particular attack arrives, it's going through your defenses and taking down your services. So again, getting that vulnerability data and remediating that as quickly as possible before an attack is critical to preventing a damaging attack. Without knowing what that vulnerability data is, you basically are waiting to see if your defenses can be bypassed. Before we get into a demo, I want to go through the MazeBolt radar architecture and the various components that make up the radar platform. If we look on the left-hand side here, you can see there's simulation component and a monitoring component in the radar platform. There's a detector component. This is all on the internet. On the left-hand side is on the internet. Here we've got the Azure DDoS network protection and the actual virtual machine and the services on that machine being protected. From the virtual machine, there's a tap, in this case using a Gigamon, which is connected to a radar detector, which is a VM. Now, I'll show you how this is it's critical to understand this, to understand how radar is able to find vulnerabilities in the defenses without being disruptive. The monitoring component monitors traffic, monitors your services, let's say a web service, with response monitoring continuously. And it creates baselines, which we'll see in the demo soon. It creates baselines to understand what a healthy environment looks like. These monitors are running in 2 different continents all the time at a bare minimum, and very, very accurate, because we're checking response times as if it's a normal user looking at that service. Those baselines, understanding, excuse me, understanding those baselines is critical to knowing during an attack simulation what a healthy service looks like, to see if there's any deviation from that normal healthy simulation. The actual simulation nodes, the attack simulation nodes, are also distributed, and those are the nodes that actually perform the attack towards the virtual machine or the service on the virtual machine to actually see if the service is protected. Now, prior to an attack simulation being launched, the radar detector is told, hey, we're about to launch from these couple of 100 IPs towards this virtual machine. Are you ready? Yes, yes. We start to launch the attack towards the service. And in the event that there is leakage through the Microsoft DDoS protection services, that leakage will be seen on our detector. That way, we know 100% for sure that there is a vulnerability in the protections here, and a case can be opened with Microsoft, and they can go and fine-tune the policies to strengthen that security. So the attack simulation goes through. Either it was blocked, in which case our detector will see no traffic, which we will then count that as protected. If we do see traffic, that will indicate there's a likelihood of a vulnerability. I'm going to switch over now to look at this in more detail so that we'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. This is the overview of the MazeBolt radar dashboard. Over here, in this particular environment, you can see the current vulnerability. This is a demo environment. You can see the current vulnerability of the targets that we're checking in this particular environment. Again, the green indicates what attacks were automatically blocked, and the red indicates what attacks were able to penetrate the defenses. Here you can see also by the various OSI layers, you can see how many hours were run, how many targets are currently enabled. There's just 2 here. You can also see the attack surface over time, how it improves or how it goes up or how it goes down. Of course, what you ideally want is to see this becoming green. You can also see what part of your attack surface has not been checked. For instance, this gray here indicates simulation still to run. So we've only checked in this particular demo around 27% of the overall attack surface. Now the UI is very interactive. It can be clicked on and you can go anywhere in the UI. We'll look more at that just now. But just to have more of an overview here, we've got another tab here called the simulation results, where you can see all of your simulation results here. You can see the target, the attack vector, the security layer, the SCB is in this case is the Azure Scrubbing Center services. You can filter for all different kind of attack. Maybe you want to see specific attack groups or specific layers, specific attack types. We've got a reporting engine where once a quarter, our account management provides an executive report. You can generate a vendor report. In this case, the vendor would be Microsoft that you would supply this report to. On demand, you can generate this report, which is a list of the vulnerabilities and the various data associated to those vulnerabilities. You've also got analytics, but before I get to the analytics, I will show you what a report looks like, which is there. So we've got two types of report. We've got first a vendor report. This is a report that's generated through the product on demand that our customers use to provide the vendor. In this case, it would be Microsoft. There's some high-level summary information about what's encapsulated in this report. Essentially, what you're going to be looking at is how many simulations are vulnerable, what the percentages of the attack surface, how many are protected, and of course, what you want to do is get rid of the vulnerabilities in the report. Scrolling down, you can see a focus on which attacks you should probably eliminate first. For instance, this particular report says Cloud Scraper, which is a type of DDoS attack, is affecting 3 different targets. You'd want to get rid of that first because you eliminate 3 vulnerabilities in one hit. And you can see by OSI layer. But then what the vendor gets is they get this detailed report here of the attack type, plus the target, plus how much traffic was sent, how much traffic leaked through the DDoS protection, and it's vulnerable, and that it's vulnerable. In this case, this particular report shows a specific type of security layer on premise. And you can see this for every single one of the attacks that were vulnerable. If a vendor is uncertain what a particular vulnerability is, for instance, Cloud Scraper, they can just click on that report, on that particular vulnerability. It will take them to a knowledge base where there's a detailed analysis of that particular attack that they can use for their own internal purposes to come up with a protection that when that attack arrives, it will automatically be mitigated. There's also a PCAP file that can be analyzed by the vendor to understand better what that attack is. Additionally, this report is available on demand at any time by the operational personnel. Additionally, you've got an executive report that's generated once a quarter, and you can see what your automated protection was when you started. You can see that the improvement ongoing as you're remediating the vulnerabilities in your environment. You can see quarter by quarter the percentile of vulnerabilities. Sometimes you see it go up. There were changes or services added. It goes up, but you can see it came down. And you can really track for your executive meetings and for regulatory purposes what's going on with your vulnerability management with regards to DDoS. Additionally, on the reporting side, for the operations, we've got analytics. You can see how many actual attacks were run in this particular month. You can see what the DDoS gap was at the beginning of the month, what attacks were rechecked out of the potential conclusions at the beginning of the month, and what the result of that recheck was, or brand new results that you actually looked at that month, brand new simulations. Moving on. We won't go through all of the product, but this is just to give you an understanding of some critical components. You have the targets. So here we've got 2 targets that have been defined. All these will be automatically found. So you've got here Azure target 1 and second target. Here you can see that this is monitoring. It's in a healthy state. You can see all the various attack vectors associated to this, and that it's got a target monitor monitoring that target, creating the baseline that we're going to look at now. Every target has to be monitored from at least 2 continents according to the radar protocol. So this response time here is an HTTP GET, a browser simulated HTTP GET towards this target here. And you can see that it's being updated roughly every 20 seconds. This is being updated every 20 seconds. It's made up of North America and Europe in this case. So we are seeing from America and Europe that this is updating. This red here, these 2 red lines here, are very important for the radar technology. Because while an attack is running, if the response times go outside of this red by even a few milliseconds, our attack will cut in under 1 second. The attack will cut in under 1 second. And while we're actually running the attack, this information, a different type of monitor starts up and provides this information to the radar management to be able to cut the attack in under 1 second, which is a critical part of avoiding disruption to online services. Additionally, we also have the ability to integrate into SIM systems. You can see when an event is starting, stopping. You can decide which results you want to see, which type of simulation results you want to see. We've got scanning events that can scan for new targets, and we've also got audit log capabilities. So let me go back to the beginning page, the overview page. So like I said, every part of the radar product is interactive. And for instance, let's look at a protected result and how it was concluded. Here we clicked on the protected result. We're coming and now looking at this particular line, let's say, Azure target, IP fragmented garbage attack, which is a layer 3 attack, protected by the network, Azure network DDoS protection services. We go into it. This is this particular result. The attack vector, the target, the port. This is the Azure services protecting it. There was a total of 3 million kilobits sent, 0 were received. And we can see that because of that, we concluded that if this particular attack hit this particular target at this particular port, this service would not go down or be affected. While this was running, it was running at about 30 megabit a second, which is the equivalent of about 65K PPS. We can see we were running the attack over around a 2 minute period. And at the bottom, you can see that the response was completely normal and stable for this particular target being tested. You can see the response again per continent. So we were able to conclude with this particular combination that if this attack arrives, that this will not cause any damage to your web API or various web services. Let's go back to the beginning. If you look at the vulnerability data, so this is now a vulnerability. If we go into one of these vulnerabilities, let's look at this one here. We can see that, again, this attack vector towards this target, towards this port, we sent a total of 14,000 kilobit. We received 14,000 kilobit. We concluded that if this attack did arrive at the target, this target will go down and be affected. The protection, the security protection that was supposed to trigger and automatically block the attack did not happen, as it did in the first scenario. So here we're running at around 80 megabit in this case, which is around 180K PPS. We can see at the bottom, the response times are completely normal. There is no reason to stop the attack prematurely. We were able to conclude a vulnerability. Now, it's important to understand we are not trying to affect the actual service that you've got. What we are trying to do is see the leakage, the actual leakage, and does the security mechanism trigger? The cutoff mechanism is just a backup mechanism in case there's any deviation from the normal response time. If we go back now, this partially protected status, if you look here, this is a target with this attack vector. Here we can actually see the technology at play to prevent any type of disruption to online service. This is typically, we are only running our product radar in production. So here we sent 1 million packets, 1 million kilobits. We received none, but during the attack simulation, we noticed that there was some deviation from the normal range of response times. Here, this is about, just a few milliseconds, and the cutoff is immediate, in under a second, before any noticeable impact. Again, we run on gaming companies in real time during production. They don't feel our technology running. So this will be rerun again. We really don't care why this was cut, but as far as we're concerned, the response time slowed down by a few milliseconds. We stop the attack. We don't take any risks. In this particular case, you can see North America. The response time in North America was the one that deviated. If we look at Europe, there was no change at all. Maybe the next time this runs, there won't be an issue. No one knows why it happened, but we actually don't care why it happened. We just cut the attack and we move on to the next one. So that's a high-level overview of the product. Here, we've actually got a simulation cycle running at the moment that I'll show you. This is a real-time cycle running. You can see that this attack vector was running to this target in this port. It's running here at around 86 megabit, which is around 180K PPS. During this particular simulation cycle, you can see all of the attack vectors that have run. If you want to redo a particular attack right now, it can be done. There's no need for a maintenance period. So if Microsoft are fine-tuning, or your mitigation vendor is fine-tuning, they can do that in real time to get the optimal protection and secure your policy, to make your policy secure without actually taking your services down. So retesting is just as easy as a click. Now you can also go in, if you go into one of these attacks, you can see the history of an attack. Let me show you. Let's go into this one here. Here you can see there was an attack. This one wasn't run for some reason, but if we go into, sorry. Let's try this. Here you can see there's a long attack history. You can see this time it was protected in this instance. On April, it was protected and protected. On the 18th, it was still protected. On the 18th, then something changed. So you can go and see the entire history of an attack, of what's going on. And with that, I'm going to move on. If anybody's got any questions, I'm going to answer them, but I'll move on to the benefits of radar. There's a clear focus on preventing the next damaging attack once radar is deployed. Through identifying and eliminating these vulnerabilities, you can actually prevent a damaging attack from occurring in the first place, and there's no reason to have a rapid response scenario. And it's a data-driven process. The DDoS vulnerability management for all of your online services, if you've got 10 online services, that's about 1,500 different attack points that can be hit at any one time and increasing daily. We're scrutinizing that all the time for any changes or any misconfigurations that are in your DDoS security policy. As Amir said, Microsoft is protected. They can absorb a large amount, but your particular services need to be continually fine-tuned because they can go down if they are vulnerable. Extensive reporting for regulatory compliance for the SEC and DORA. We're compatible with those compliances. We also have reporting for vendors and for your executive management. Cyber insurance premium reductions. We've seen our customers, especially in the payment processing industry, getting premium reductions in cyber insurance because of being in the MazeBolt RADAR program. And brand and financial loss prevention are the obvious things of preventing a DDoS attack. And with that, I'd like to conclude And I hope that this has been interesting, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks so much. The team has been great with answering all the questions. We do have a few that are worth bringing up. The first one is, what kind of functionality is available for MSSPs to use this for mini clients?
So we've got a full multi-tenant capability in the product. You can have a master tenant, a master managing multiple tenants. So if an MSSP, we have MSSPs using the product for they supply DDoS protection services to their customers, and they can then fine-tune them from one centralized place and manage that vulnerability management. Let me actually show you. If you just give me a moment, I'm going to have to stop sharing 1 second. I'm not sharing at the moment. 1 second. Just give me a moment. Just to give you just a taste, I'm not going to go into all of this, but if you look, can you see my screen? Sorry, I can't. There we go.
Yes, we can.
So this is a demo environment. You can see here, essentially, you can decide. You can see which, you can have an overview of every single one of these tenants, and you can go into them, and look at that specific tenant of what's going on in that tenant. This is a demo environment with a lot of testing going on. So it would look slightly different, but this is what a multi-tenant environment would look like.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how does MazeBolt integrate with SIEM?
You configure the SIEM server in MazeBolt. You configure the parameters, the login to the SIEM, and the IP or the address of the SIEM server. And then prior to an attack starting, the SIEM will receive a log. The customer SIEM will receive a log and notify that this particular attack is starting, or this was the result of an attack, or audit logs for who logged into the system, so that it's based on various simulation parameters that the customer decides what he wants reported to the SIEM, that the SOC can overlook activity so that they know, hey, at this time, an attack is happening, I've got nothing to worry about. We can see that this is radar triggering these events.
Great. The next question is, does this cover both private AD and public DNS domains?
So it covers public-facing services. So if a service is available publicly, we can validate that service. If it's internal, we cannot validate that service.
Great. Thank you. The next question is, does Microsoft put conditions on the amount of attack vectors these testing partners can use?
Let me refer to that. No, Microsoft doesn't put any condition on the number of attack vectors the partner can use. We do have some guidelines that are agreed upon with all the partners. Those are primarily related to the volume of the attack that they are allowed to launch towards the resources in Azure. And these are typically volumes that are not crossed unless there is a specific customer request to increase some of the attack vectors. And in this case, either the customer and or MazeBolt will reach out to us. And in often cases, we do provide confirmation to run attacks at higher speeds that we normally allow.
I think it's important to note with regards to what Amir just said, that with the radar technology, we don't have to exceed Microsoft standard requirements, because we trigger the security mechanisms of the Microsoft DDoS protection without having to do that. and you can get much wider coverage without ever having to go to those rates. So actually, with the radar technology, there's no need for that part of the equation. And obviously, if you're doing traditional red team testing, it's everything Amir just said.
Great, thank you. Next question is, how is the cyber insurance quantified for the reduction? What are the key metrics that MazeBolt provide evidence of?
First of all, right now, any organization without the radar platform running in the organization in Azure, the organization doesn't really have any data showing how vulnerable your services are to being taken down by a DDoS attack, i.e. business continuity outage. You kind of have a blindness. You know what you have blocked, but you don't know what you can't block. So when you show a cyber insurer, what typically happens is these, from my understanding from the customers that have gotten these reductions, is they make a presentation on an annual basis to their insurer, saying what they're doing as part of their security program. Now, organizations that are highly reliant on uptime for their services, which payment processes are very much so, they show what they're doing in their overall cyber program. And with regards to business continuity, they show how many vulnerabilities they've identified, how many vulnerabilities they've eliminated. And the cyber insurer typically doesn't see all of that data, so they see that that particular customer is taking that threat seriously. So because of that, they get those reductions, of course, showing that there's a reduction in the vulnerability level, i.e. they're engaged in a program, there's ongoing validation of defenses that they'll work, and prevention of a damaging attack. This data in these presentations assists in getting those insurance premium reductions.
Great, thank you. This next one's a bit of a long one. In the leading Microsoft data center map showing DDoS protection services, the Central Canada Entra data center was not listed. Can you confirm whether or not the Central Canada Entra data center includes DDoS remediation and protection for hosted tenants?
Yeah, so I assume, and I hope I got the question right, I assume you're referring to Microsoft Entra products and solution. Those are protected by at the platform level against DDoS attacks in all of the sites, regions, and data centers where Entra is offered through.
Great, thank you. And the last question we have is, how can MazeBolt be rolled into a managed SOC solution?
So on an MSSP level, what we've got today is we've got the MSSPs using it in a multi-tenant level, and that very much depends on the customer, the organization. But first of all, in terms of the management capability, we have the multi-tenant management capability. In addition to that capability, we have the ability to deploy a detector that you saw to check the leakage. If the customers are using shared POPs for the protection, that one detector can be associated to many tenants. So you're able to then deploy with a single deployment, you're able to tap into all of your customer range, or if it's your own, or if you're a large organization, tap into your own range and be able to see all of that data centralized. And again, all of that data can be fed into a SIM. So you've got one comprehensive management platform that can be rolled into a SIM, but as a standalone, it can manage the entire operation through a single interface.
Great. That seems to be all the questions we have. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Amir and Matthew, for being our guests and for sharing the great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us answer the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/ans community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.